Hello and welcome. This episode of the Sales Chat Show is brought to you by the Academy for Chief Executives. We hope you enjoy and benefit from this episode. Hello folks, saleschatshow.com, another episode. Phil Jesson, Graham Jones and I'm Simon Hazeldine from the Sales Chat Show, driving your sales forward. And in this episode of the Sales Chat Show, we're talking about selling once a year, which has got me very, very confused. This is Phil's suggestion for a topic. I thought we should be selling all the time, Phil. What on earth do you mean by selling once a year?
This, Simon, is clearly where you're going wrong.
Now you tell me.
Yes. I'm going to suggest that there are a number of reasons why we should be selling once a year. First of all, it means that we are aligned with our clients' strategic thinking. It also means that we are probably talking to top decision makers, not middle-ranking decision influencers. And I would also suggest that by selling once a year, it's low on time, but high on financial return. The ROI case is unstoppable. So what do I mean by this? Could I suggest then that if we are to sell once a year, there's probably an ideal time to do that. What do you think that might be? I'll tell you.
I'm very glad you are going to tell me.
Give us a chance to respond, but no, carry on. Why don't you?
The obvious time to do it, I would suggest, is at the start of the customer's new business year.
Okay.
So if the customer is an April 1 business year, you'd probably be really thinking about selling once a year in the month to 6 weeks prior to that, because the customer is now putting the spotlight on everything to do with targets, budgets, forecasts, strategy, all of that top level boardroom stuff, which is exactly what we want them to do. We want to be in step with the customer's timing and thinking. We do not want to be out of alignment. And similarly, if the customer is an October 1 business year, then you'll be doing this exercise probably after the summer holiday in September, getting ready for that new year.
Okay.
I think that all makes logical sense, but I think that it makes psychological nonsense, because if I'm ringing up my customer once a year in March, that customer knows, oh God, here we go again, trying to sell something to me. So it's going to put them in a negative frame of mind if I'm only contacting them once a year.
As with all of these things, I guess it depends on what you might say. But maybe what we should say, Graham, is something like, what we want to try and do is to make sure that we are tuned in to where your business is today, where it's going in the future, why that's important to you. And as a result of that level of understanding, we will put together a package that fits that perfectly.
So you're talking about doing this with existing customers?
Yes, mainly existing customers, but if you are after a large potential new customer, again, understanding the natural rhythms and timings that are in their business might prompt you to think about when you're doing the research and when you might actually go for the big pitch.
And aligning with their timing of year is about aligning with their thinking. When they're thinking about what the actions they're going to be taking, you want to be in there understanding that.
Yeah.
And potentially influencing it, I suppose.
Yes, that's very well put, and it reminds me of a joint visit I did with an account manager some years ago, where the account manager went in to the customer's office and started with the words, I hope you don't mind, but a few questions I need to ask you before year end. And the customer said, year end? Oh, right, well, you should have been here 6 months ago then.
Yes.
And here was an account manager who clearly was out of step with the natural rhythms and timings that permeate throughout the customer's business.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about what would take place during this big annual meeting.
This big annual get-together.
Yeah.
Basically, if account managers are listening to this, it's a fabulous opportunity to deploy the boss. This is a fabulous opportunity to get directors going to do the selling for you by meeting their opposite number, brackets a director, and going in to see that director, maybe initially under the guise of doing some sort of quality audit. I'm here to understand whether we've exceeded your expectations during the last 12 months or not. And during the conversation that takes place, round about what you might call the second cup of coffee moment, maybe the sales director or the chief executive changes gear slightly and says, well, whilst I'm also here, can I talk to you about the next 12 months? What are you trying to achieve? What are your objectives? What are your priorities? What do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? What could we do for you that we're not currently doing? What do you see as being the big issues in our future relationship? It is a question-led process.
Yes.
By a senior ranking salesperson, brackets, the sales director, the chief executive. So if you are an account manager, using a military analogy here, you are deploying the big guns to go in and do the work for you.
So you're finding out where the customer is thinking now, where the customer is planning on going, and identifying opportunities where you can help them.
Yes, where you can add value along that journey. And it doesn't matter, of course, if the customer's level of understanding about their own business, it doesn't matter if that level is thin, i.e. poor, because there's a great opportunity under that scenario to say, well, let's just stop this conversation now. Maybe what we need to do in a couple of weeks' time is to get together. And why don't we meet in a local hotel? You bring your top team, I'll bring my top team. And between the two of us, we'll thrash out a few ideas on flip charts in the room. Where are you today? Where are you going and why? How are you going to get there? And what value can we add along the way?
I mean, that all makes sense.
Thank you.
If you're selling something that people only want to buy once a year. But doesn't it depend upon what I'm selling? Doesn't it depend upon the kind of business that I'm in? If I'm in a business where I might be relying on a 1-year contract that's going to provide a service to this company, that's fine. But if I'm in, I don't know, the stationery business and I'm selling office stationery, I'm going to make more of my money on daily upsells to things than I am by having an annual contract for something. So selling once a year, if I'm selling printing paper and ink cartridges to a business, I'm not going to make much money doing it once a year. I might get the contract for the year, but I'm going to make more money by in there selling every day.
The daily upsell, good phrase, that's probably something that you could do on the telephone or by email or Skype. What I'm talking about primarily here is that big set piece face-to-face meeting, as one of my clients calls it, the annual strategic review.
Yes.
Nice label. This is not the day-to-day stuff I'm talking about. In the same way that members of staff get an annual appraisal, an annual performance review, well, this is an annual appraisal for a customer, but make no doubt about it, one of the agenda items from our point of view is to sell more of the same or sell additional products and services by constructing a closer alignment with the customer's thinking and strategy.
So potentially in this annual review, you're also defining what sales activity will take place
Yes.
with the customer.
With
not
the customer.
With the customer. So how often would you like us to call on you
Yeah.
to help you with this project?
And normally I find that when I'm working with my clients on this, the level of time that they have to put in to service this plan is less than people calling in every 4 to 6 weeks because they happen to be in the area or it's time to call in. This is one of those occasions where you're quite right. Having identified what the customer wants us to do, we then tailor-make a service package, a support package, and much of that can be done remotely.
So you're saying that a lot of businesses, for example, will do an annual review when they've been supplying their customer for a year. And they come in and say, well, we've been with you for a year now, we get the champagne out, we've had a lovely time together, what are we going to do for the next year? But what if that's halfway through the customer's financial year? Are you suggesting we do an annual review with their financial year, and even if we've only been working for them for 3 months, we work for them for 3 months, we come in, it's the beginning of your financial year, we do that annual review now for them rather than for us?
I would still say link it to their timings. If we've only been servicing them for 3 months, then maybe it's more of a review of the honeymoon period that has just taken place, and we're now seriously talking about living with each other and working with each other thereafter. So you position it around that.
So whatever timing we as the supplying organisation are working on, you're saying we align with the customer's year, we align with the customer's business planning, the customer's forward thinking, to align our sales activity, callage, etc., whatever it is, with what they have going on in their business.
Absolutely right. The problem is that from the research that I've done on it, only 60% of account managers and their organisations actually know the customer's business year start.
Yes.
Well, it's not difficult to find out. You've only got to go to a company's house and it'll tell you.
It will indeed.
Or even ask them.
Or even ask. What better? Yes. I did mention it was a question-led process, Graham. Thank you for staying awake on that one. But you're absolutely right. But we need to find out. But generally speaking, most of the time, account managers will not view it as a piece of essential information that they should know. But I would say it is absolutely essential if they want to be in step with the customer.
Well, I think if nothing else, many salespeople listening would have heard the "we haven't got any money in the budget" challenge from a customer. And here you're making sure actually that you understand when the budgets are going to be constructed, and potentially you're able to influence what is being allocated to what. And I mean, I like the way that this is very different to going in and selling to the customer. This is working with and selling with the customer. And I think I could see you being seen as more of a partner in this way, maybe even a strategic partner than a supplier.
And as consumers ourselves, I'll tell you where you are used to being on the receiving end of this. It's when you buy a car.
Yeah.
Because the good car dealer, having sold you a car in January, they're not going to be back on the phone 3 months later trying to sell another one. They know, having asked the right questions, what the usage is. They probably know your buying pattern. Do you like to trade the thing in after 2 years and go for the upgrade, or do you go the distance and sell it typically 5 or 6 years later? But a good car dealer will understand the natural timings that we use and will be on the phone, rest assured, at the right time for us, and therefore it is not pushy. It is appropriate. Oh, and thanks for phoning, Fred. Yes, I am in the process now of looking at a replacement vehicle.
Yeah, nobody minds a sales approach
At the right time,
time,
in the right way.
Yeah, and I think for account managers listening in, this is potentially a way to get your appointments with this customer almost diarised in principle for the year. So you've agreed your callage frequency, you've agreed with the customer who you're going to see and when, which should hopefully make the whole process a lot easier.
Yes, and I sometimes come across account managers who will say to me, well, there's no point pursuing this customer because they've just gone ahead with a competitor of mine. Well, don't go and pursue the customer on the annual anniversary of when the competitor got on the business. Go and pursue the customer, the prospect at this stage, at the time that is right for that prospect's business year.
Yeah. So the big thing here is timing and having potentially your senior person in there to give it
the big guns,
gravitas.
And it's a question-led process. Okay. It is very, very low on talk. It is very high on appropriate questions, most of which are quite strategic.
Okay, fantastic. So just summarise for us, if you were to give some recommendations to people listening in, what practical action should they be taking?
Point number one, do they actually know the customer's business year start and what have you? And maybe there ought to be a log in the office of that. Point number two, having referred to it as a great opportunity to wheel the big guns in, we all know that if an account manager tries to do that with a week's notice with their boss, it's impossible. Yeah. It's about saying to the boss, the sales director, I really need you on this visit in 2 months' time. So getting the ducks in a row is important. And of course, teeing this up with the customer is also very important by saying to that customer, As you know, we like to stay in touch with what you're doing and why you're doing it. So when I see you in 4 weeks' time or 6 weeks' time, perhaps we can have a slightly different meeting, slightly longer meeting maybe, because there's a few extra questions I might like to ask you.
Okay, fantastic. So it is selling once a year, but I suppose to answer Graham's challenge, not just once a year, is it? It's, for me, it sounds like it's teeing up your activity with that customer in advance. It's more strategic and it's aligned with what the customer.
I use that title simply to gain your interest, but you are right. It is strategic selling once a year. Thereafter, it's delivery and just staying on top of opportunities that might arise, as Graham's pointed out.
I mean, I might have challenged it to begin with, but you are winning me round now. And I think that one of the important things is if your strategic review and you've got your big gun in there, and the big gun is now an advocate for you, saying, we'll sign the deal, and that person is now very supportive of your business, that whoever else lower down the food chain that you're selling to has got their boss saying that you're a wonderful company.
Exactly, that's a very good point. And if you think about one of the questions that we often get asked on the Sales Chat Show, how do I get around procurement? How do I deal with procurement? Well, rather than upsetting that department or individual and going over their head, the best thing to do is to deploy your own boss to go over the head of procurement and go and have a strategic conversation with their opposite big gun neighbour.
And I really like the fact that we are very, very upstream in the customer's buying process, decision-making process, rather than fighting downstream with a lot of competitors. So
absolutely.
It should give you a clear point of differentiation and advantage. So selling once a year, folks, and unfortunately it doesn't mean only one sales call a year, but boy oh boy, that will be an important sales call to make with your boss in tow. I like the idea of getting your boss to do the work for you. I'm sure that'll be very appealing to a number of people listening in.
Absolutely.
So this has been Phil Jesson, Graham Jones, and I'm Simon Hazeldine for the Sales Chat Show. It's been a pleasure doing this episode for you, and good luck and good selling. You have been listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and from everyone here at the Sales Chat Show, we'd like to wish you good luck and good selling.